Welcome back to Tact Talks. I'm your host, Jack Brandwood, and this is the podcast where I speak to some of the brightest and most influential people in the tech industry in the UK. This week, I sit down with the VP of Engineering of Lunio, Anna Dick. We talked about everything from Anna's experience in both big and small teams, how we get more women into tech, and staying ethical in decision-making.
One of the many things I think that attracted me to Lunio is actually one of their core values is about staying ethical through all their decision making. That's really important to me.
For more information on this episode and Tact Talks, head over to tact-it.co.uk. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the episode. Hi Anna, thanks for coming on.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Look, to get started, for anyone who doesn't know Anna, who are you?
Well, there's lots to me, but I think in the context for this podcast, my name's Anna Dick. I'm a tech leader and software development manager, CTO person. I've been doing that in and around the Northwest probably for about 15 years. Passionate around building tech teams and products that solve real problems.
Yeah.
Especially around that kind of scaling space. So moving from startup to scale up and working and growing with teams to kind of solve those problems.
Incredible. And we just realised that we've done a podcast together before years ago. So
we've done this before.
It's version 2.
Version 2.
Amazing. Look, I always like to start these things. I think I mentioned probably a little bit with too short notice that our vision at Tact is trying to create a world where everyone gets their dream job. So awkwardly, I'm going to ask you to draw what you wanted to be when you grew up, where this all started. Are you a good drawer?
I'm not a very good drawer, no. I can't remember the last... I don't use pen and paper very often these days.
Nobody does. It's a really weird feeling. It's like when you've been on the school holidays.
Am I going to draw it and then you have to guess?
We could try and guess, yeah. It depends how bad it is.
Okay.
I'll have to give you a signal if we can't guess.
Okay, let's try and guess what this is.
Okay. Yes, I know what you're doing.
Okay.
Are you trying to,
that's pretty bad, isn't it? Any ideas?
Gymnast, right?
That's it.
Yes,
yeah, gymnast.
yes.
Yeah, I was really into gymnastics when I was younger. Trained a lot. Probably was competitive. Probably till I was about 13 or 14.
Amazing.
Until my interest.
For anybody who's listening, we'll get you to sign it after.
Okay. Yeah. I imagine we'll get that up on a wall somewhere. So that's what I wanted to be. I think for years I always thought I'd be a professional gymnast. Was really into my sports, and then I kind of hit that 14, 15 where I think my general interests changed, and it was much more about socializing with my friends and like not going to training and not being as active in that way. Yeah, I never made it to be a gymnast.
Oh no, I think the same thing happens with everybody who's grown up. Then as soon as they get friends and that sort of thing, then it just kind of falls by the wayside. So where did you grow up? Whereabouts?
So I grew up in the south of England in a small village not far from Oxford, so in Oxfordshire. A lovely, nice little village, fairly quiet, fairly rural, which is lovely. So it's been quite a big change for me living in Manchester.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, especially now so I've got a daughter who's 12 and she's now just started out senior school, and I went to quite small schools, they were quite rural, and she's now kind of inner city Manchester school, which is massive, like 3,000 kids or something in the school.
Jeez, wow. So what was because I always tend to find that a career in tech is usually foreshadowed from younger life. When was your exposure to tech? When did it happen?
So nothing at school.
Wow, okay.
I mean, I'm in my mid-40s now. So when I was at school, there wasn't really an obvious career path into tech. I didn't know about tech roles. Even like STEM, like maths and science, wasn't promoted nearly enough. So I didn't really have that. I think, I wanted to be a gymnast, so I was very sporty when I left school with okay GCSEs, but I was never that academic. I did a GMVQ in leisure.
Right, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was kind of that sports thing. So, all right, no, not a gymnast. Maybe I'll be like work at a leisure centre or something. So I did that, and that was just enough to get me into university to do an economics and business degree. But again, it's very general. It was very like, don't really know what I'm going to do. But I certainly hadn't heard of tech roles. I mean, when I was at university, we did do some computer science modules and had a bit of an interest, but didn't really tie that in with like building products or tech products. It was still very much that very kind of computer science piece in the tech world. And it wasn't until I got my first job, which was actually as an IT recruiter.
Was it? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
No, it's not a secret. I'm proud of it. It's where I started. And then strangely, obviously, I worked for a recruitment tech platform for quite a while as well.
Of course.
Which was so handy. But during that role, which I wasn't very good at, by the way, I didn't really get many placements or make the big recruitment money that I was promised when I started. Sure. But I started talking to a lot of people that were in tech. And I was like, what is a web developer? What do they do? What are all these acronyms?
Acronyms.
Sorry.
I do that all the time.
Acronyms.
I do that all the time.
What's HTML? What's PHP? What's a database? So speaking to all these people that were getting into these roles, there's a big kind of, .com and after kind of boom. And I was just really curious. And also, they were earning lots of money as well. I was like on my like 8K starter job or something. And it got me interested enough to start learning. So I taught myself HTML.
How did you do it? What's for it?
So books, and then I also had a friend who was actually at college at the time. So we got set up, and we were starting to learn and build out some really, really basic web pages. And it was just enough for me to, I say blag, because it felt like at the time I was totally like winging it.
Right.
But a job as a junior junior webmaster.
Okay.
So I don't know, that's probably not a role anymore that you've recruited for. Yeah.
Junior webmaster, awesome.
Amazing job. It's kind of like a Jedi kind of title, isn't it? It is. But it was a role mainly in digital marketing agencies where they were kind of moving from print to digital, and you'd kind of design, build and manage the websites for customers. So you do everything from trying to understand, what's their product. You do the wireframes. I did some design, which was really bad, like you've seen from my drawing, when you like the design side of things. Then you'd build the basic website, and then you'd host it, but then you'd manage it. So you'd do kind of like customer management piece as well, and it would be integrated with like e-commerce platforms for selling products. So I did that in Edinburgh, which was where I'd ended up in Edinburgh. For a good couple of years. And then I had and then my career started in digital agencies, and then I got a job in Manchester where I moved more towards the kind of technical team management side of things as I got more interested in like the back end side of the tech as well.
What was it? Yeah, because that's an interesting one, isn't it? The difference between a digital agency and a product focused software house. How was the transition from one to the other?
Well, I mean, the first transition from digital agencies was not so much to a software house, but was to travel companies.
Okay.
So my first kind of, I'd say, proper kind of product focused role was working for TUI. They had a branch in Manchester, and that was working with their product teams, building out hotels and flights websites. So that wasn't then just the front end. I was like managing a team that was doing a lot of technical integrations for flights, hotel stock. So there was a lot of data, much larger data sets than I've managed with. So then it was like, well, how do you deal with that? What are the different roles? What's the performance impact of different data? What happens when you've got, millions of people trying to log on and buy a holiday when you've got a sale, and what's the impact on your infrastructure? So then I started looking at and managing like teams for hosting and support teams as well. So that's how it kind of all grew out. And then I got more involved in all of the different roles.
What was your first management role? I mean, you mentioned there your management of support
teams.
So
I was still like working embedded in the team, making sure that things happened, I guess, in those holiday roles. For TUI. I then did a stint at Money Supermarket.
Of course,
and that was working for the travel arena, but that was as a technical project manager.
Wow, okay.
So that was my first like at scale, I think, tech job, and it was still very much in not the early days, but it was before agile ways of working. So it was still very, very siloed, where you had somebody was writing a spec, that was getting handed over to development, then it was getting handed over to test, and then the deployment team. And the deployments at that point were crazy. I mean, they were still like copying code onto servers at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. We'd have to get there to do a deployment. They'd be like copying codes into all these dependency management, rolling out a database. And then it would get to like 8 o'clock in the morning. And if it wasn't like perfect, then it would have to be rolled back. And
I'm probably romanticizing it a little bit, but it does sound kind of like this, I don't know, not the hustle and bustle, but you know what I mean? Like the drama of making sure it gets out on time.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, I love a challenge. I was just telling you about my running challenge, but if I look back now at how stressful those deployment moments were compared to like continuous deployment now, where the whole ethos is around like small changes.
Yeah.
Really often, so the user doesn't really even notice that you're incrementally improving their experience. Whereas this was like big bang. We'd work on things for like months, and then we'd all be there through the night and like, oh my God, if it didn't work, like
literally just switching one off and turning one on, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
That was starting to get into that kind of management side of things, or kind of like very kind of tech team leadership piece. But I think my biggest break after that was moving to On the Beach.
Right.
And that was a role as IT manager, what the job was called at the time. And I think it was the first internal tech role. It was at the time where they were really looking to accelerate the move from we're a call center business to we're an e-commerce, holiday online provider.
Was that their old office in Cheadle?
No, it was before then. They were in Didsbury.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, they were in Didsbury. So it was already a really big call center, like a 200-seat call center. So I came in and was looking after everything kind of IT. So I was looking after the call center, the team that were doing like desktop support and all that side. So that was really interesting because I'd never done that before. So that was that kind of other part of tech away from software development. But I was also responsible for bringing the existing e-commerce platform in-house and growing that team as well. So that when I started, it was me and got a couple of Ruby on Rails developers, and we started to like get control and understand the code base. And then just grew that team, started to create the structure and create it more into an agile team that could deliver the value kind of early and often. I think by the time I left, there was maybe 30, 35 or 40 people there. So yeah, it was a really big growth curve. But that was really like working so closely with the senior leadership team, and especially the CEO, Simon Cooper, to really understand and test and learn, like how can we utilize tech to create the much better holiday experiences and like package things up in different ways. Sure. So that it can become a successful online business, and it has done. It did.
Sure. And then what happened after that? And
after that, kept with the holiday theme for a little bit, and I went back down south. So being originally from down south, I thought I'd always get back down there.
Right.
I mean, what happened was I got down there and I was like, God, so excited. After being in Manchester and owning a house in Manchester, I got down to London way and I was like, oh my God, this is so expensive. And actually ended up coming back after a year. But I had a stint down there working with Thomas Cook on their Hotels for You. Similar thing to On the Beach, although that kind of next phase, there was already a team of like 30. And it was like, how can we organise ourselves to be more agile, to really incrementally deliver out changes for the customer, and then grow that team as well, because online holidays was really, really kind of kicking off.
Yeah, and then obviously worked at Hiring Hub. Was that after Thomas Cook, was it?
No, so then wanted to move back up to Manchester, and at the time BBC was expanding there. So I was then portfolio manager for TV and mobile platforms up there. So that was a good 3 years stint. And that was great. That gave me that really big corporate experience. Got exposure to so many different things. So the team that I was working on was going through a bit of a digital transformation at the time. It's about 200, looking after iPlayer on TV and mobile, looking after iPlayer radio, looking at the old red button. Well, it was old red button. It's now obviously a digital red button service, but that was part of the thing. We worked on events like obviously Wimbledon, football events, Olympics was obviously a big one that we're involved in then.
Obviously, you've got some amazing kind of names on your CV where you work Money Supermarket, Thomas Cook, Chewy, BBC. Going into these teams that some perhaps are already established, what's the first thing that you do? Because I'm sure it can be quite overwhelming going into a team that's already established. You're the new person, like who's this coming in to manage us? What's the first step?
I mean, the first step I always do is spending time in the teams,
sure.
Like getting to know the people, how they're interacting, what they're doing, what they want to do, what are their challenges as individuals and teams. So that's a really big bit of it. But then it's also working with the product and the business and the commercial side, like what do we want to achieve? What do we need to achieve? And then, how do we kind of move the team towards that? And in, for example, within the BBC, a lot of it was around reorganizing the teams around outcomes and products rather than being in siloed teams that was aligned to the tech stack type of thing. And then it was a lot of coaching and mentoring around that mindset shift, because that product, delivering product rather than say just delivering code is quite a different mindset, and it's not for everybody. And it's kind of, we had to take people on the journey and give them the right training and coaching, to be able to work in those environments.
Yeah, no, I can imagine it's yeah, I guess if you're going into a particular role, you understand what your goal is, don't you? So it's already outlined for you. And speaking of which, you've just started a business called Lunio, as you can see by the cup.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about Lunio.
I was really interested by Lunio. So it's a business founded from a digital marketing agency.
Oh, cool.
Thinking around 2016, because I've just started.
Yes.
The dates might be a little bit out. And they were working with a customer of theirs, and they'd identified, and this was for performance marketing, so managing a lot of the Google ad traffic. And they'd identified that there was a lot of unvalid traffic, so a lot of clicks coming not from customers, so potentially from competitors, from bots, from non-human traffic.
Okay.
And actually, this was taking up a lot of spend as well. So what they did is I guess call it maybe an MVP, but they built out a bit of a product to kind of test this, to be able to detect and then block that traffic so that people could get their marketing spend back, and they could actually reuse that marketing spend on valid traffic as well. So, and the interesting thing is, it's actually a problem that people don't really know about, because like Google and the companies where you're at, they don't do a lot to kind of stop that malicious activity. I think for them, they're still making money out of that traffic, whether it's valid traffic or not. So the whole idea around Lunio is that they can detect this traffic, they can link into your ad campaigns as well, so they can understand what's valid user traffic, and then save a bulk of the money if it's bots or customers, by detecting and then protecting those clicks as well.
That's a great idea.
So yeah, so it is. I mean, and I think the thing is, like I said, people don't necessarily know that it's a problem. And I think part of Lunio's kind of rollout is that it's so easy to onboard and get it set up that for a new customer to go through the initial kind of trials phase, I think it's a couple of weeks, we can just demonstrate that value quite quickly. And it's not like months of onboarding or big technical changes to get the code into your site. And then we obviously protect that data, all compliant in terms of the way we keep it and anonymize it as well. So that's my week 2 knowledge on it.
Well, anyway, we'll make sure we put the links in for anybody who's obviously listening,
great.
and anything that's wrong, we'll just dub over.
Okay.
Hopefully, that's incredible. I didn't even think about that. And like you said, probably a lot of people don't.
Yeah, it's primarily targeted at marketers who obviously manage those campaign budgets. There's an easy to use dashboard as well that presents that data back, so they can then use that data to demonstrate the savings that they're making.
Oh, incredible. Right, okay. Fantastic.
I think it's like, and again, I might have to check this, but I think it's like roughly like 11%, uplift in terms of the saving.
Oh, right.
In terms of like up to or around 11% of the traffic can be invalid traffic, which is effectively wasting budget.
So it's pretty tangible saving then for anybody.
Yeah, for the digital ad performance ads, yeah.
Interesting, right. So how big is the team now, and what's been going on at Lunio recently?
So there's loads of growth going on. I mean, like I said, I started 2 weeks ago, there was 5 people, there's another 3 people started. So I think overall the team's probably about heading towards 50 or maybe slightly over that, I'm not sure. From a tech perspective, there's probably about 12 we've got in the team at the minute, but again, we're consistently growing that. Part of that scaling journey is looking at what are the key roles that we need to make sure we're adding. So product is a new area that we've got to really give the product a focus, get focused around the user needs for the next iteration of that. We're maturing the platform in terms of automated testing so that we can move a bit quicker. We're obviously looking at how we scale the architecture for growth so that we can deal with a lot more data. We can do smarter things with that data as well. So we can really meet the customer needs.
Exciting. Wow. So you've obviously been brought on as VP of Engineering over at Lunio. So your main priority at the minute is to grow the team out. Is that right?
Yeah, so I think it's all about how do we take quite a small engineering team that already has a great product that has a lot of users and look at how we scale for the future. A lot of that is about the people, the team, how we organise, and then maturing the kind of underlying platforms and making some of the technology choices for the future.
Amazing. And recently secured investment, is that right?
Yeah, so it was last September they got the Series A investment. So so there's a lot of growth in all sorts of areas. And actually some of the leadership team are in America this week. So that's exciting as well, that they're out speaking to different companies in America. I think there's a big kind of digital agency play as well in terms of as a customer base. So I think there's a lot of conversations going on in that area.
Oh, interesting. So when you say digital agency play in terms of like almost like an affiliate sort of thing, if they
so there's a partnership side to the business that is having lots of conversations in terms of how we can grow the business that way as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
How exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah, okay. Because obviously you've hired for, again, we've talked about it earlier, just multiple different businesses, really big names, startup businesses as well, like Hiring Hub.
Yeah.
What's your approach? How do you go out there and how do you interview / find people?
Yeah, I mean, I think from moving from that corporate world, so BBC and then I was at Co-op, I took the jump into startup world for the first time, which was with Hiring Hub. And I think that was really interesting because you go from being at a big company that has a tech brand, they have a brand, they have lots of people that probably help you with recruitment. But with the smaller scale ups, it's important to try and get not only your business brand, obviously, but like a tech brand, so that the tech community is kind of, this is a great place to work, this is a good product, this is a great culture, a great way to deliver products, it's great tech stack. So I think that area is quite important to me in terms of and getting out and speaking about that as well, so that you can kind of get a lot of interest. From a process perspective, we're trying to keep the process as short as possible. We want to make sure that we are attracting the best talent.
Yeah, I think keeping that process as short as possible, 100%. I think obviously I'm a recruiter, and you see the people that miss out tend to miss out on the talent are the ones that take too long, either feeding back or have a 4 or 5 stage process that's ridiculous, or it's unfortunately the way the market is at the minute. You just need to be quick. And people will sometimes choose a business based upon how much effort is required to apply for it. Unfortunately, interest can wane pretty quickly.
And I think at the minute where we are in Lunio, we're looking for a few more senior people to kind of bolster that team up. But we do want to bring in kind of root talent as well. And I think once we've got some more of that place, we want to create partnerships with whether that's the different coding camps or different initiatives like tech returners, and diverse and equal in terms of like how we can get grassroots kind of set up and kind of develop skills and talent through the team.
That's great. There was the great term someone used who we had on the podcast, weirdly enough, an element of like passing down the ladder to the people, coming up in tech. It seems to be an ongoing theme of that ethical practice of making sure that you are bringing more junior people up, because everyone knows there's not enough people. Yeah, it's just a nice moral thing that a lot of people in the tech community do, passing down the ladder for the next generation.
One of the many things I think that attracted me to Lunio is actually one of their core values is about staying ethical. Yeah, so like through all their decision making, like making sure that we stay ethical, and that's really important to me.
That's incredible. Again, we've spoken loads of times, and a big thing for you is getting more women into technology. And I read a stat, it's like there's 19%, I think it was actually from Tech Nation, and 19% of the tech workforce are women, which is crazy low.
Yeah, still crazy low.
Yeah. What can businesses be doing? And I'm sure this is a question you've been asked quite a lot. What can businesses be doing to attract more women into tech?
So I think there's a couple of different things. I think you need to make sure that your environment is open to everybody and is kind of a comfortable space for people to work in. I think from a recruitment perspective as well, you need to make sure that your advert, whether that's your adverts or the recruiters that you're working with, the spaces that you're advertising in, and the partners that you're using are also diverse in terms of the shortlist and the candidates that they're speaking to, not just from a gender perspective, but from all kind of minority groups, to make sure that you're getting good diversity in your candidates. Then there's working with specific organisations, like Women in Tech, Tech Returners, Diverse and Equal, and lots of other organisations where they are, actively bringing more women through, especially into kind of the boot camps, whether that's coding boot camps or there's UI UX kind of boot camps, there's introduction to tech type workshops, and then maybe partnerships with universities as well. So I think there's a lot of different spaces. It feels like there's still a lot to do in that area, and I think it needs to start much earlier on than in the workforce, in the workplace. Sure. There's still a lot of work to do, and I think there needs to be more work in schools potentially in terms of getting girls more into whether that's STEM subjects, but just generally getting more of an understanding of what the different tech roles that there are.
But I can interject a little bit, because I know exactly what you mean, and I think that education piece around, because I think even still now, even with all the educational stuff that's out there around tech, I think people do still think a techie is a bloke with his headphones on, kind of crunching keys, which, as you know, isn't the case. And she's been on the podcast, Amelia Bampton, shout out, and she's done incredibly well for herself and in her career. And admittedly, she says that I've never touched a line of code in my entire life. Yeah. And there's loads of people out there like that. And it's I think you're right 100%. I think there is that education piece around. By the way, you don't just have to sit behind a computer and crunch keys all day. Unless you want to.
Yeah, but even if you did, I think ultimately you're building out all the apps that people use. And you can be designing it, you can be building it, you can be testing it, you can be doing a slice of all of it through that. But ultimately, they're products that we use every day, and the percentage of products that we use every day to manage life things is obviously increasing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the time.
Amazing. Well, look, I'm so excited to see how your first year plus goes at Lunio. So it's exciting times. And look, I always like to ask, I'm conscious of time because we could have rabbit on all day, but we've talked about passing down the ladder before, and a lot of the time that starts from a leadership position. Is there anybody that you've crossed paths with during your career that you owe a lot to, or that's kind of burned in your memory? So
for me, a real advocate that I felt put a lot of trust in me was when I made that leap to on the beach as IT manager. There was a guy, Jeff Wood, who's the finance director there, and I was still very junior, and I think he put a lot of faith in my ability. Well, not necessarily my ability, but I think he could see something in me. I think he could see I was curious and I was hungry to kind of learn. And I think that was really the launch of my career into kind of like senior tech roles after that on the beach experience, because I got exposed to so many things. I was reporting to the board around everything that I was doing. I was managing, IT, call center, software, data centers. And kind of putting all of those things together, I think that was the foundations for me then ultimately getting CTO type roles.
Wow, that's great. I don't think people understand the power of someone just having a little bit of faith in you and being like, you're doing a good job can make so much difference, evidently, because of how well you've done in your career as well. Cool. And look, last question. I always like to end on this. If today was your last day on earth, and apart from spending time with family, of course, and being on this amazing podcast, what would you be doing?
I would hopefully be mountain biking in the Peak District or in Wales or something.
Wow.
I love a bit of mountain biking. Haven't been able to get out much, just the weather's not, it's been a bit cold and then a bit wet as well.
Yeah. Obviously a fitness fanatic for anyone who doesn't know. And you're currently doing this 100, when this podcast comes out, you'll probably completed it, 100K challenge with your friends, running 100K.
Yeah, in January.
Yeah, you're a lunatic. So are you winning? Are you ahead?
I am maybe third at the minute.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm on 95, and there's a couple of people that have actually done the 100. So yeah, so I need
to run home after this.
I need to run home. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say. Awesome. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on. Really, again, I think anyone who is watching this podcast needs to watch Lunio and keep an eye on Lunio, because recent investment, growing like crazy, doing amazing stuff. And yeah, keep an eye out for the ads, and yeah, excited to see where you are in the next 12 months.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jack.
And that's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Anything we talked about will be linked in the show notes, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and we'll catch you on the next one.